What's up guys, it's Chris with Irene Iron Fitness, and today I'm going to share my sun-dried tomato turkey meatball recipe with you. So if you are looking for a fresh meatball recipe, keep watching. These sun-dried tomato turkey meatballs are very easy to make, and I love the flavor in them. I actually used to make this recipe all the time back when I lived in my house, and I would do these turkey meatballs for food prep for my lunches for work. Now when I was at home, I cooked them in the oven. Today I'm going to be using my skillet and doing them all on the stovetop. I could try them in my convection oven, but right now we are boondocking with the escapers at the annual bash and we don't have any power, so I am limited to my propane anyway. So if you have an oven, this would be a great time to use your oven, or you can do them on a skillet like I'm going to do today. So I'm gonna walk through the ingredients really quickly with you. I'm using turkey. I like to use ground turkey a lot. I get these packs at Costco. They're organic turkey, 1.5 pounds per package, which is a great amount. It's more than a single recipe, not quite a double, so 1.5 pounds is a good amount. And I'm going to use some fresh arugula. If you don't have arugula, you could use spinach. You could use frozen spinach that you've thawed and drained really well. I like the color and I like getting in greens any way I can. I really do love the flavor of arugula. It's nice and peppery. I'm kind of obsessed with it. If you haven't tried arugula, give it a shot. It's super healthy. Sun-dried tomatoes. I'm using these dried versions. The julienne cut. It's dried. If you give them a squeeze, they feel kind of soft. If they're too dried out, you'll have to reconstitute them, but these feel nice and squishy, so I didn't. I like the dried version in these packets because once you open these, you need to refrigerate it. So you can squeeze the air out, get them nice and tight, and you can cram it in your fridge. You can find a spot for the leftovers. If you're using a jar that's packed in olive oil, then you're getting extra calories from the oil, which there may be a good time for that, but I generally choose my sun-dried tomatoes not packed in oil so that I can save the calories and control the oil when I want oil. And then also when you're using those jars, they're heavy, they're bulky, and if you're only using a portion of the jar, then you have to put the unused portion in your fridge, and it takes up a lot more space than these packets do. So for RVers, I highly recommend anything that's in a pouch, so as you use it, you can condense it down. Next, I'm going to use 1 egg. I will lightly beat this before I add it to the mixture. I'm using fresh garlic a lot. It's like 5 cloves. If you don't have fresh garlic or you're just being lazy, use dried garlic powder. I will do that often if I just want to be super quick. I won't even mess with the fresh, but if you have the extra whopping 3 minutes that it takes to use the fresh, definitely do it. The flavor goes a long way. Feta cheese. I'm using a touch of feta cheese, and this is about 2 ounces. It's going to stretch out between 1.5 pounds of turkey, so it's light on the dairy. I do try to be mindful of my dairy intake. I try to limit it to 1 serving a day, and this is a good way just to get a little bit of the flavor, but not be overwhelmed with gooey cheese. So just a little bit adds nice flavor, adds nice moisture, and it just goes so well with the sun-dried tomatoes. I love it. And then finally, my spices. I have salt, pepper, dried basil, and dried oregano. So for the exact amounts, go to my blog, ireneironfitness.com, and get the printable version. So what I'm gonna do now is just mix all of these together. I'm gonna use this arugula container because we're dry camping, we're limited on water, we're limited on power, we're limited on everything. I'm gonna be resourceful, mix it up in here, and I'm gonna then split it into 12 equal sized balls. So we'll get mixing and then I'll show you what it's like when we form the balls. So for these sun-dried tomatoes, I did buy the julienne size, but then I did chop them down, and I like mine to be about the size of a raisin so that it spreads out well between the meatballs, and every meatball gets a couple of little bites of that tomato in there. So I mix these together first before I add in the cheese, and I do the cheese last because it's a crumbled feta. A lot of those crumbles are pretty small already. There's a couple nice big chunks in there that I just want to help keep their shape. So I'm gonna add the cheese in last just to help it keep its shape better. And then what I like to do is get all the turkey off my hands into the bowl, whatever bowl you're using. I use my scale. I always portion out my meatballs when I'm portioning them. I'll take this final weight of everything with the ingredients combined, mixed together, and then I divide it by however many portions I'm making or how many balls I'm gonna make. So 29.66 divided by 12, and then that's the size I'll make my meatballs at. I got my meatballs formed, and one thing I want to point out is try to keep the cheese off the edges because we're frying it in this pan. If you have a big chunk of cheese hanging on the side, it's going to melt into your pan and burn up a little bit. So if you see a ball that has some cheese on the outside when you're forming them, just try to push it in a little bit and then form the turkey around it so that the cheese is inside as much as possible. If you're baking it, it's not as big of a deal, but in the pan it might get a little messy. These balls are sticky, they're gonna look rustic, and that's okay because they're gonna taste delicious. So I'm using my brand new Scan pan, which I'm really excited about. I love it so far. And because it's brand new and it's like the best of the non-stick commercial grade, I'm going to put these in without any oil. You might need to put in a teaspoon of oil straight away if you have an older non-stick or something that doesn't work quite as good as a brand new. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it, and if it looks like it's starting to stick, I might add a little bit of oil, but I'm gonna go with it and see how good the Scan pan really works. So just get your balls as nice as a circle as you can and drop them in, keeping them spaced apart. And just get all of them in the pan in a single layer. With 12 balls, you should be able to get it all in one. My pan is 11 inches, so if you have a really small skillet or if you're doing a double batch, you will need to do this in batches because if you overcrowd the pan, your meatballs won't get nice and brown on all the sides. So I'm gonna get all these in, I'm gonna let them cook up, and I'm gonna try to rotate them evenly so that I can get as much color on all sides of the balls as possible, and we'll check in once it's time to turn them. The hard part about doing meatballs in a skillet is trying to get them evenly brown all the way around and trying to get them to keep their circular form. So what I usually do is I'll get it's really hard to describe, but I'll do like the first drop of the meatball and then I'll flip it into the other side. So that's like the top and the bottom bread of a sandwich, and then I'll flip it onto its side and I'll just try to keep rotating it on the side. And while I'm doing that, I'll use my tongs and try to just squeeze it into a ball, because as it's sitting and it's cooking, gravity's gonna wanna pull it. It ends up making like a hexagon square. So they're not gonna be your perfect, beautiful meatballs that you would get in an oven, but they're still delicious and, like I said, rustic. And they do look rustic, they look great. There's a lot of different ways to do meatballs. You know, a lot of people put the binders in them with the breadcrumbs. You could do regular breadcrumbs, you could do panko. I really like to use oatmeal as my binders when I'm doing anything like meatballs. But honestly, I started making meatballs without binders at all, and they work fine. I'm not a meatball connoisseur by any means, and I'm sure a lot of Italians or big meatball people would just scoff at these, but if it doesn't like make it or break it for you, then I just try to keep it simpler with less ingredients and keep it easier. So I don't put the binder in. And that's my method on flipping it. So now that I got them on its sides, you just want to pay attention and keep moving them around evenly, squeeze that shape, and try to keep them as beautiful as you can without stressing out about it. So as you get near the end of your meatballs being finished, you just want to constantly be like picking them up and inspect all of the angles just to make sure that they got some sear on all of the edges. You'll be able to tell right away if there's a meatball that has a blind spot that you need to turn over and hit with the pan. So my scan pan is working awesome. I love this thing. I'm obsessed. If it continues to work like this brand new function for extended period of time, I'm gonna be ecstatic. So I love my scan pan. My meatballs are beautiful. These meatballs took me about 20 minutes total for the cooking time. So either way, they're gonna take you 15 to 20 minutes in the oven, 15 to 20 minutes at your skillet. It's a little bit more labor intensive when you have to sit here and poke them around, but we are boondocking in the middle of the desert, guys, and I am cooking delicious gourmet meatballs. And I'm sure my neighbors can smell it, and we might go share some meatballs. I don't know. We might eat them all. I don't know. But we're having fun cooking, and that's what it's all about. You got to do whatever it takes. Enjoy what you're eating, and cook your foods at home. Improve it in moderation so that you can sustain it. You can enjoy what you're eating and get healthier and healthier as you progress your cooking. So that's it, guys. If you like this, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and catch Erin and I every week for health, fitness, and RV living videos. See you next time.